It was a cold, cloudy night in the Scottish Highlands. A 63-year-old man, Tony Parsons, was out on a solo bike ride, raising money for cancer research. He had beaten cancer himself, and now he wanted to give something back. But Tony never made it home. No one knew what happened. No body, no bicycle, nothing. For 3 years his family searched. Police looked. Volunteers combed the countryside. It was like Tony had disappeared into thin air. Until one day, years later, when a woman followed her boyfriend into a forest. What she saw made her sick. And before she left, she did something small but incredibly smart. She quietly left behind a Red Bull can so she could find the place again. That one can would break open a mystery that had haunted a town, a family, and investigators for years. This is the true story of Tony Parsons, his life, his disappearance, and the 2 brothers who thought they had buried the truth forever. If you enjoy this mystery, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because at Whispers of the Unknown, we uncover true stories that were buried, forgotten, or never told. Who was Tony Parsons? Tony Parsons was many things: a husband, a father, a friend, a coach, a cancer survivor. But to most people in his hometown of Tillicoultry, he was simply known as Tony, the guy who was always smiling and always helping. He had served proudly in the Royal Navy, working as a submariner. After retiring, he stayed active, working at the local swimming pool, refereeing rugby matches, and doing charity work. In 2016, Tony was diagnosed with prostate cancer. He beat it. But he didn't stop there. In September 2017, he planned a 104-mile charity bike ride from Fort William back to Tillicoultry. He wanted to raise money for others still fighting the disease. He trained for weeks, riding long distances alone to prepare for the journey. His son, Mike Parsons, later said, he wasn't just doing this for himself, he believed in giving back. Tony was strong, experienced, and full of heart. But what happened next would turn that hopeful journey into a nightmare. Tony boarded a train to Fort William on September 29, 2017. He wore cycling gear and carried his bright yellow-framed bike, a recognizable ride that he had taken on many charity journeys. By late evening, Tony was seen at the bridge of Orshey Hotel. He stopped for a hot drink. CCTV showed him inside the building, calm and relaxed. It was cold that night, foggy. The Highlands were quiet and dark. Still, Tony got back on his bike and rode off into the night. That was the last time anyone saw him alive. When Tony didn't return home, his wife reported him missing. And from there, the search began. Scottish police launched a full-scale investigation. Helicopters scanned the hills. Mountain rescue teams walked for miles. Volunteers searched the roadsides. Posters went up across the Highlands. But there was no sign of Tony, no body, no clothing, not even the bicycle. It was like he had vanished. Months passed, then years. In 2018, his son Mike appeared on BBC's Crime Watch, pleading for help, hoping someone had seen something. But still, nothing. Police quietly suspected Tony might have been hit by a car and that someone was hiding the truth. But they had no proof, no witnesses, no confessions. The case went cold, until something strange happened, inside a relationship. About 100 miles away, near the Ouch estate, lived 2 twin brothers, Alexander and Robert McKellar. They were known to locals. They ran a game shooting business and managed estate land for wealthy clients. The area they lived in was remote, surrounded by forests, rivers, and isolated roads. And the bridge of Orshey Road? It passed right by their land. In late 2017, the brothers were telling people something odd, that they had hit a deer while driving on the A82 the same night Tony vanished. People found it strange. Some even told police about it. But again, no evidence, no connection to Tony. No one could prove anything. What police didn't know was this. That night, Alexander McKellar, drunk and speeding, had slammed into Tony with his white Isuzu D-Max truck. Tony was thrown from his bike, badly injured, but still alive. Instead of calling for help, Alexander panicked. He drove off, then returned later, with his twin brother Robert. Together, they hid Tony's bike, destroyed evidence, and moved his body into the woods. There, they buried him in a stink pit, a hole used to dump dead animals during game hunts. Tony's body stayed there for years, rotting in silence. In 2020, 3 years after the disappearance, Alexander started dating a woman named Caroline Muirhead. She was smart, observant, and as the relationship grew, she noticed things. Alexander was acting nervous. He had secrets. One day, she asked, "Is there something in your past I should know about?" He hesitated. Then he told her. Piece by piece, he revealed what happened that night. He told her about the crash, the panic, the pit. He even took her to the place where Tony was buried. Carolyn listened quietly. She didn't panic. But before she left the area, she did something incredibly smart. She left a Red Bull can at the edge of the site. It was her secret marker, a way to find the location again if she needed to tell the police. And she would, because soon she realized the man she was dating had killed someone. Caroline eventually contacted police. She shared everything, her conversations with Alexander, her knowledge of the site, and most importantly, the Red Bull can. That one object helped police find the burial pit in early 2021, and when they dug it up, they found Tony Parsons' remains. Tony's skeletal remains, pieces of his yellow frame bicycle, and fragments of clothing. Forensic examiners used dental records and DNA to confirm identity. The cold case had reached its first major breakthrough. Finally, after 3 years, his family had answers. Tony had been killed, covered up, hidden like an animal, and now the truth was coming out. In March 2021, police arrested Alexander and Robert McKellar. They were charged with attempting to defeat the ends of justice, and later with culpable homicide. In court, they admitted the truth. Alexander had been driving drunk. He hit Tony, and together they buried the body to hide the crime. They burned Tony's clothes, they dumped his bike behind a waterfall, they cleaned the vehicle, they deleted text messages. All to pretend like nothing had happened. In 2023, the case finally went to trial. Alexander McKellar pleaded guilty to culpable homicide and was sentenced to 12 years in prison. His twin Robert admitted to helping cover it up. He was sentenced to 5 years and 3 months. But for Tony's family, the sentences weren't enough. Outside the courtroom, Tony's family found themselves in a strange new world. His son Mike spoke publicly. "He never made it home. We waited and hoped. It has taken a toll on all of us." His words echoed a community's grief, mixed with relief. Tony's friends, like Royal Navy veteran Roger Jones, remembered him fondly. "Just a nice guy, taken from us." Police praised Caroline's bravery, saying her single act, leaving that can, was the spark that uncovered Tony's story. Tony's disappearance had traumatized the area, leading community memorials, charity rides in his honor, and even a BBC documentary in 2025 titled The Vanishing Cyclist. His family also received a substantial compensation award from Alexander in 2025, a recognition of their suffering and a measure of justice beyond the sentence. This case reverberates far beyond a single verdict. It shows how sometimes a tiny act of conscience can topple years of silence. It highlights how remote landscapes, bogs and waterfalls can hide dark truths, but can't hide forever. It reminds us that justice often begins with one person choosing to speak. For Tony's family, answers arrived too late, but they arrived. And because of that, Red Bull can, the silence ended. Not just for them, but for anyone who knew Tony, believed in him, and refused to let the mystery rest. His son Mike said, "They left my father to die alone in the dark, then buried him like garbage. That's not just a mistake, that's evil." In the end, the whole case came down to one tiny detail. A Red Bull can, left behind by a woman who had the courage to speak up. Without that can, Tony might never have been found. Without that act, the brothers might still be free. And without that woman, Tony's family would still be searching. Sometimes solving a mystery isn't about high-tech equipment or massive teams. Sometimes it's about someone brave and one small clue. The courtroom had handed down justice. But when a case this haunting comes to light after so many years, the story doesn't simply end with a verdict. The wounds don't close that quickly. Instead, what follows is often quieter, more personal, and just as important. When Tony's remains were identified, his son Mike Parsons finally had the answer he'd waited 3 years for. In interviews, Mike said, "We always had hope, even when people told us to let go. But until you know, until you see, it's impossible to move on." The family held a private ceremony after Tony's body was returned. His ashes were spread in the hills where he loved to cycle. They declined media interviews for months. But when the trial concluded, they broke their silence to say thank you. To the police, to Caroline, and to every person who kept Tony's name alive during the search. What hurt the most, they said, was knowing that Tony could have been saved. He wasn't killed instantly. Medical experts confirmed that he may have lived up to 30 minutes after the crash. 30 minutes where he could have been saved. Instead, he was abandoned. That, more than anything else, is what broke them. In Tony's hometown of Tillicoultry, neighbours still speak of him with warmth. He wasn't just a cyclist. He was a lifeguard, a swim coach, a grandfather, and a Navy veteran who had beaten cancer and kept on giving back. In the months after the trial, a charity ride was organised in Tony's honour, raising funds for cancer research. A memorial bench was installed near Bridge of Orchy. Locals started an annual event called the Tony Ride, not just to remember him, but to remind people of the value of community, justice and courage. Even those who never met Tony felt the weight of his loss, the way he vanished, the long silence, and then the truth. It was the kind of case that stayed with people, not because of the horror, but because of the humanity. Detective Chief Inspector Alan Somerville, who led the investigation, said it plainly. Without Carolyn's bravery, this case would not have been solved. Tony Parsons was a man who lived with purpose. He beat cancer, loved his family, and died trying to help others. He deserved better than what happened to him. But thanks to a small act of courage, a drink can in the dirt, his story didn't stay buried. It came back. It brought justice. And it reminded all of us that even when the trail has gone cold, even when the fog is thick, there is always a chance the truth will find its way home. If you followed this story, thank you. Share it. Speak it. Keep Tony's name alive, not just as a victim, but as a symbol of how even quiet lives can leave powerful echoes. And remember, someone out there is still waiting for their loved one to come home. If you know something, say something, because the truth doesn't stay buried forever. Enjoyed this mystery? Hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because at Whispers of the Unknown, we uncover true stories that were buried, forgotten, or never told. Murder, mystery, the unexplained, all real, all chilling, all waiting to be discovered. Don't miss what others overlooked. Subscribe now to Whispers of the Unknown